Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're well. Today I have the King of Swords as the obstacle and the Ten of Cups as the opportunity. So, jumping in here, we got this guy. Who's this guy? Archetypally speaking, I think this symbolizes an individual who is a good investigator, someone who can someone who could venture out a little bit of the kind of bubble that we all occupy of the familiar space. Somebody who could go out, dig up some dirt, come back, and not just deliver us the news or the information, but break it down and use it to pass judgment. Often, let's say, or to exercise some sort of authority on behalf of this knowledge that has been found out there. And I like to imagine that this could be something like an accountant or a psychiatrist, for example. It's like in in both of these cases, or any similar sort of analogy, you have someone who's a specialist in interacting with a certain type of information that, even though we are the source of that information, we're full of this information, we don't really know how to parse it and process it and figure out what the sum of that information means and represents. You know, I think for a lot of people anyway, you go to an accountant and you bring them the shoebox of all the receipts and papers and whatever, and you just kind of go, here, this is all mine, but I don't know. And then they go, no problem. And they crunch the numbers and they do the things and they tell you about the different brackets and you just kind of nod along. And then at the end, they just go, here's how much you're getting back, or here's how much you're paying. And then you go, okay, thank you. Great. Or you go to a psychiatrist and they ask you a whole bunch of questions and you supply them with this information and you're like, I don't know what this question has to do with the last question. What do you mean, does that remind me of my mother? Sure, I guess I'll talk about that one time as a kid where I got bit by a dog. I don't understand what any of this has to do with it. Then at the end, they're like, listen, here's the thing that you have. That thing that happened then is connected to this other thing. They spell out this, the meaning, the patterns within that information. And so this is a very important kind of a very important type of job, a very important type of person. We regularly trust these types of individuals with our information. And this can even be something like, your friends that you open up to. And maybe you think you're just, blowing off some steam, complaining about your shit, but they are the source of, you know, maybe some sort of catharsis. You get to bounce ideas off of one way or another. I think the dark side of this card, because this is we got it's the black background. It's the obstacle. The sort of the cautious read of this archetype is these you know these are individuals, and they're dealing with personal information that you are willingly handing over to them. And most of the accountants that most people deal with, I imagine, are fine and they do their job. But it's certainly, I'm certain that there are no accountants that take advantage of the trust that people, put in them. And I don't know, fuck around. Maybe they wedge some numbers in there. They do some tricky stuff, or some friends that you think you're confiding in them. You think you could share personal information, and they could sympathize with you or whatever, but then they just end up gossiping about it, right? So I think this obstacle is just kind of like a reminder of the archetype of person who is generally seen as highly valuable individual for their intelligence, for their ability to handle these kinds of concepts. And to some degree, you could also make these analogies with, like, you could replace ideas and information with tools and devices, objects, things like man-made objects. So you surrender your vehicle to a mechanic, and you go, I don't know, that light is blinking, the engine light is on. You're the expert, and you trust them with it. And once in a while, I think we've all heard these horror stories of this mechanic who, they know you don't know anything, and so they take your ride. So I think this is just kind of like a reminder that the people that we often entrust with just fix this. I don't know anything about this. Once in a while, you can get that person who will take advantage of that. So due diligence, check around. Maybe if you were considering finding a new whatever, a new best friend, a new mechanic. And then here we got 10 of Cups. So with this, I was thinking about like a big wheel, a big turning wheel, kind of like the Wheel of Fortune card, um, and graceful, like a graceful succession. So I think one of the things that are necessary for succession is for a bunch of people to be members of some category, some group. So it's like a family, or you're all employees in a particular company, or there's something that unites people. And then as time goes on, people move through this hierarchy in this kind of, it's just the next person, the person at the top retires, they pass away, something, everybody shifts up a step. And I think that there is a way to do this gracefully, a way to do this with finesse. And I think a big part of it involves like being mindful and like being open to the kind of situation that different people, that these kind of people in this group of succession that you're a part of, you know, being mindful of the fact that the way they perceive the world is pretty different than the way you see the world, because one of the main aspects of these types of secessions or hierarchies, generally it has a lot to do with age, right? The kind of seniority is often a byproduct of how long you've been with the company, or, well, your parents are older than you and your kids are younger than you and your grandparents are even older than your parents are older than you. Um, and I think that everything gets significantly easier when when you kind of try and I don't know. There's this thing that I think is pretty common for us to do, which is like identify with the each time, each epoch or era of a person's life, childhood, being young adult, senior, whatever. They have their pluses and minuses. They have their benefits and their setbacks. Um, and it can often be pretty difficult to remember how you know, how you experienced the world when you were a kid. And it's certainly impossible to, remember into the future and, try and see things from the perspective, or at least obviously you can't remember what your, let's say, grandparents are experiencing, but to nonetheless try and take age into consideration, instead of projecting your present self into the individuals that share this hierarchy with you, um, to try and to try and approach these different individuals with respect for the kind of periods of their life that they're in. Um, and I think this is just something that's often just we just don't think about it. we we interact with individuals and we end up thinking like, why are these damn teenagers so stupid? Completely forgetting the kind of shit we did maybe when we were teenagers, or failing to imagine how our lives might be different when we're 30 years older than we are now. Maybe all the shit we've gone through. Maybe you're just like, whatever. Like, is it an excuse for cynicism? I don't know, but a 60-year-old cynic is certainly different than a 30-year-old cynic. A 60-year-old cynic might look at a 30-year-old cynic with some, I don't know, disbelief. It's like, kid, you're too young. Anyways, um, yeah, it kind of made me think about that kind of hierarchy, that kind of um, almost like a serenity, like a serene like acceptance of these different posts that people occupy along this sort of, I don't know, maybe not wheel so much, ladder. Um, yeah, so that's certainly one aspect of it, and another one kind of made me think about how like, and this card again, the weight card is sometimes they're a little too specific. Like this is like a very happy picture. I mean, the Marseille is just okay. Bunch of cups. One of them is that one. Is it tilted or are the other ones tilted? It's hard to say. But yeah, another interpretation that comes to my mind when I think about this card is the again, it kind of deals with hierarchy, but like the way in this picture that like there's a, what I would guess is an adult couple, and then there are a couple of kids goofing around like little goofballs, and the kids are kind of dressed the same as the adults, and I kind of think this is there's certainly something about this that's echoed in the number 20 card of the major arcana of judgment, Les Jugements, um, which which depicts in the Marseille, uh, and I think in the Waite it's relatively the same design, but it depicts parents and a child and like an angelic like figure up above calling down to this family, to these two generations. And I think there's something cool about this card's depiction of, I think, maybe an echo of that, because the 20 card, there's one type of numerological conversion where the 20 is essentially a 10. Generally numerology doesn't, it just goes up to 9, but we're dealing with my numerology here. But yeah, but seeing families as these kinds of echoes, seeing children not just as echoes of their parents, but maybe more accurately as echoes of the parents of their parents, because the people raising the kids are now in some way channeling the experiences they had as kids and the way they remember their parents parenting them. So it's this kind of alternating. It kind of makes me feel like there are only two generations at any point in time. Like, there's, if you start with a couple and then they have kids, by the time those kids have their own children, the grandchildren will essentially be echoes of the first couple, and then it'll alternate generations back and forth. Um, and and this is of course entirely tangential or dependent on like whether the parents stay together. It's the kids aren't from the first marriage and then one of the people remarried or whatever. But just as a just as kind of like an archetypal concept, you could also apply this to the way that products or services evolve, or that sociopolitical trends birth other sociopolitical trends. And anyway, just kind of this makes me think of this alternating these alternating generations. There's that other I forget who wrote this, but there's that saying where like, you know, uh, strong individuals or like yeah, strong individuals make the world into like an easy, comfortable place, and an easy and comfortable world, you know, makes people really weak because there's nothing that they have to really contend with, and then those kinds of weak people, the way they contribute to the world makes the world into a hard, dangerous place, and a hard, dangerous world shapes people into being strong and competent. So you kind of alternate between these two. Once again, similar concept. But yeah, so it kind of made me think of that. And generally, I think it's just, I think the opportunity would be like mindfulness, mindfulness directed at the kind of relationships that occur between generations and how generations influence each other. Looking past the age difference and the generational authority difference, um, things like that. Yeah, that's gonna be it for me today. Thanks for watching. Drop me a like if you enjoyed the video, and comment free reading if you would like to be entered into a draw for a free reading. And I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.